But, I live like a really blessed life where I'm
Yeah.
able to like have an interesting schedule and go beautiful places, and I get to play music and make a living doing it. And I've got healthy kids, and my day to day is pretty great. I have a lot of opportunities, and I take advantage of them. I try not to lose sight of the tremendous privilege that I have.
The Moonlight Ramble was created to explore the human side of the music industry from an Appalachian perspective. On today's episode, I travel south on the country music highway to Brevard, North Carolina, to speak with Grammy-nominated Travis Book on balance, his experience in the world of progressive bluegrass and podcasting, and to celebrate the upcoming release of his new solo album titled Love and Other Strange Emotions.
All your projects. You got String Dusters, your podcast. That's been around for a couple years now, right? That was a COVID.
Yeah.
It came out of COVID.
Yeah, we started doing it. It wasn't a podcast initially. It was just like a live stream variety show.
Yeah.
I sort of invented a format. I was doing enough like Instagram Live, and then I realized the Gray Eagle had the capacity to live stream from the venue. So I sort of tried to kind of invent. It was definitely very COVID specific sort of show. And then once I'd done those for about a year, it dawned on me that format, it would be easy for me to take that 90 minutes or 110 minutes of show and condense it into a podcast. I already had the content.
Oh yeah.
And that was why I sort of launched the podcast.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about that more later. And then your duo with Andy Falco.
Playing the music of Jerry Garcia.
Jerry Garcia. Yeah.
Broke Mountain is back, 20th anniversary this year. So we're doing shows. We just announced today that we're playing the Rooster Walk Festival in Virginia.
Yeah.
So that band is back, re-releasing the record. It's five. There's five of us that have always been in that band. Robin Davis is the one guy who lives in Colorado and doesn't really play on the national scene, but he still plays music with his wife and plays mostly locally in Southern Colorado, and is an incredible musician.
Oh, that's awesome.
Still. So yeah, that band is back.
And then what we're here to celebrate is your upcoming release this week of your solo album.
Yeah, my solo album comes out on Friday.
That's exciting.
It's awesome.
I love seeing you talk about it because seems emotional, very honest and vulnerable, and you're really poetic. You speak about it in a very poetic way. So all of these projects, how are you keeping up? How are you surviving?
Day by day.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot about what the future will hold for me and my capacity for keeping things in balance. But yes, literally day by day, and really detailed schedules so that I know what I have to do when I have to do it. And then I can compartmentalize and get away from it and go to the woods or be with my kids or whatever it is I'm supposed to do then. Really, being so busy has really helped. It helps bring me into the present because it's so easy to get distracted that it makes being present even much more important because there's sort of like less time to waste, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're using your time very intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a lot of time to just kind of dawdle, but when it is dawdling time, I really dawdle.
What do you do? How do you dawdle?
The other day I had this amazing moment. I was hanging out. One thing I try to do is I try to schedule what I call 0 days.
Good.
And I always line those up when I can spend time with my partner, Corey, who's amazing. And so we'll do a 0 day where I try not to do any work, and it doesn't mean you don't do anything, but you don't do anything you don't have to do. And we'd gotten done with a big long bike ride, and we were back at her house, and she'd gone to shower before we made some food together. And I was just sitting on the deck with her dog, and I would throw the ball for the dog, and then I would just sit, like an 80-year-old man on the porch, just sit. And for the first time in years, I was experiencing a state of like there was nothing going on in my brain, and I was just sitting in the sun, and it was a blissful experience.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I don't get a chance to just sit and do nothing very often, but I caught a glimpse into what it will be like when I can do that more often, and it's beautiful.
Oh, I love that. That's great. That's good. I'm glad you're making that time. A lot of people don't, even who aren't as busy as you, don't take that time for themselves. So you have to recharge.
When I mention the concept of 0 day to people, they look at me like I'm insane. But it doesn't. It seems like a really good idea to me. Preserve time to not have to do anything.
I'm newly coming into that because I think so many people put their self-worth on productivity. So that is something new within the last couple of years I am trying to do. I haven't called it 0 days, but it definitely even taking an evening to not do anything. Even if the house is a little dirty, it's tomorrow. We'll do that tomorrow.
Even an hour.
Yeah.
To surrender into nothing.
Yeah.
But that's all sort of just part of a larger discussion about balance and achieving balance in your life. And you say your point about us sort of judging ourselves and being judged on our level of productivity. Well, I'm more productive when I take the time for myself.
Exactly.
I can't do it 12 hours a day after day after day. The productivity drops off, the quality, and the enjoyment, it drops off. And so balancing, whatever that means, sleeping in or going to the woods or taking a full-on 0 day, which is like the best. I'll put them on the calendar like 4 months in advance.
That's good.
I'm like, this Monday is going to be a prime day for
You're
a
like
0
looking
day.
forward to it.
I know, and I do everything I can to preserve that space and try to keep it sacred.
Good. That's great. That's a great example of what we should be doing for sure. I'm going to show you a video. My daughter and I, Charlotte Jean, who's 7, have danced quite a bit at the house listening to your all's music. She had some very persuasive arguments about missing school today ride down with me. And if it wasn't such a quick trip, I probably would have brought her, but she really wanted to be here.
Hey Travis, I wish I was there with you right now. I have 2 questions. Who inspired you to sing? And what makes you happy? And I really, 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 really like your cover As It Was by Harry Styles.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Who inspired me to sing and what makes me happy? Both really good questions.
Yeah.
I think singing has always been a part of my life because growing up, both my parents would sing. We'd sing in church. They'd sing after I'd go to bed. They would sing together, and they would play gigs together and sing. And my mom was in rock bands growing up, like a local cover band that would play the bar every weekend or play weddings, that kind of thing. So, and then on Sunday we go to church and we'd sing hymns, and we'd all, like, from a young age, my parents would teach me to switch parts. As my range changed, I would be able to sing more parts, and my mom could sing 2 or 3 different parts, and my dad could sing. So we'd be reading the hymnal and singing songs. So I get that from my family, from my parents, I think. And from early on, singing was just a natural thing that I did. And it's like something that I've always done.
Yeah.
I've always sung. And I feel really, really grateful for that. I'm lucky that when I open my mouth to sing, usually stuff comes out that is at least somewhat pleasing to my ear or to someone else's. I mean, when I sing, people don't run away.
Right.
So that's great. And I've sort of built a career on that. It's been really, really helpful. I didn't do any formal training, and I don't do any formal training. I just I just sing. I'm really lucky that I can sing. I
Yeah.
know some people can't, and that it's
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would be like.
Oh, shoot.
And then the other question was, what makes me happy?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because that's a question I ask people on my podcast, and I haven't prepared a very good answer myself. But there are so many things that make me happy. You know, a moment of peace, a moment of like real honest intimacy with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it's like I'm about to say moment again. I think happiness tends to come in these little like tiny bursts of like realization.
Mm-hmm.
Like here I am, and this is really this moment of life is like extremely juicy,
Mm-hmm.
to use a word my friend uses. Like that to me is what makes me the most happy. Experiencing something on like the appreciating the moment on the deepest level
Mm-hmm.
is when like the most happiness arises. Like
Yeah.
I was riding my bike today and I ran into a bunch of people on the trail. I never ride with other people, but I ran into this group of dudes, and so of course we were riding way harder than I would have wanted to either. Anyway, otherwise, because that's what guys do when they get together, you know. And finally, I was like, I don't want to ride this fast, and so I slowed down. And then a few minutes later, we kind of came around the corner, and the light changed, and the leaves popped, and I was like, wow, you know. I'd had my head down, and I was so focused on trying not to blow up, and then boom, this explosion of color. Like those moments are the things that make me the happiest. When I am most intimately entwined with the experience that I'm having.
Your solo album, you've had a solo album before.
I put out a record like a decade ago.
Yeah.
It was called Alice, and it was like a tribute to my mentor, Benny Galloway. And it was a bunch of songs that we'd either written together or that he taught me. And it was just me playing guitar. It was all just guitar and voice. It was just sort of something to make. I was playing a lot of solo shows then, trying to make ends meet because we were having our first kid. And so I just sort of made it. But what I've made this time is my first like real effort toward a real record with other people and with production and mixing and all of those things, you know. So it feels like my first.
And it's titled Love and Strange and Other Strange Emotions. So hearing you talk about being intentional, being in the present moment, have you always been this in tune with your emotions? As a child, were you like super sensitive, or did you have some grand awakening that you're like, I need to, I don't know, a spiritual awakening of some sort?
I don't know when I don't know. I think as a kid, I may have had some sensitivity, some awareness, but probably not. I think there's sort of been a period of I have not yet experienced like a grand awakening moment. And I've actually even kind of given up on that. You know, there's a period of time where I kind of turned a corner and began to have some real powerful realizations about the nature of reality, at least from my perspective, my reality, which could be considered sort of the beginning of sort of an awakening process. And that involves sort of heading down a little bit of like a sort of spirituality wormhole, a lot of reading, music was hitting me differently. And I was having a lot, and things got pretty light for a little while. Like I got pretty light, and I was thinking there was a chance I was like, maybe, I mean, this is going to sound silly. I was like, I wonder if I'm going to achieve enlightenment in this lifetime, right? Like things were getting pretty light. My being was, I mean, there was like rainbows shooting out of my eyes. I mean,
Mhm.
I was really in it for this
Yeah.
brief period of time. And then of course that comes to an end, you know, and then there's a period of like trying to recapture that
Yeah.
feeling,
Mhm.
you know. And then finally I realized, I was like, okay, I'm not going to get free in this lifetime, and that's totally cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drop all my neuroses. I'm not going to transcend all these things. And which was also kind of a relief, because there was a real period of time there where I thought, well, are all of these things that matter so much to me, are they all going to lose their, I mean, you know, it's because everything I was reading was that, you know, when you're becoming a fully cooked being, all the stuff that has ordered your universe, all the things that have mattered to you, all that stuff falls away.
Detached.
And there's like there's like this big, like, it's almost like a traumatic experience of sort of
Yeah.
like losing yourself. And
Mhm.
and as will happen, I was like, part of me was still like holding on really
Yeah.
tightly to that.
Mhm.
Who am I going to be once I've done this? Is any of this going to matter to me?
Mhm.
Then I realized it wasn't going to happen. And so there was a sense of loss where I was like, oh, that's too bad.
Mhm.
I'm not going to become fully enlightened in this lifetime. But then there was also a huge sense of relief, which was like, okay, well, I can still care about these things that I care about, you know,
Mhm.
even if I know on one level they're all trivial
Yeah.
and meaningless. At least I won't come totally unmoored in this
Mhm.
lifetime. What was the question? Okay, I'm bringing this back. So once I got through that, one of the byproducts of that, though, was gaining a lot of awareness about the difference between who I am and myself, and my mind,
Mhm.
and the phenomena that was happening in my mind of
Mhm.
like thoughts and emotions, and
Mhm.
becoming less attached to them.
Mhm.
And it's incredibly frustrating still how caught up I get in the things that are going on in my head.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not real,
Mhm.
but I still get caught up in them, and associate really heavily with them. And emotions in particular are really fascinating and kind of annoying and troublesome. And falling in love again, and going through all of that has really exposed a lot of this stuff for me.
Yeah.
These emotional states, whatever they are, jealousy is a particularly
Mhm.
sticky one and really uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And so, you know, working on this record, writing music, things are coming out, ideas are coming out, and trying to figure out what to call this record. That was just something that sort of popped into my head one night when I was hanging out with my girlfriend, trying to decide what I was going to call this record. I was like, because love is like the mother of emotions, and the mother of reality, and love is like everything, but it's also, as an emotional state, it's very strange.
Mhm.
And emotions in general are, I think that they're just strange.
Yeah.
They're kind of weird, you know?
And which ones are acceptable, or like, you know, jealousy isn't acceptable, but it's real. It's a real feeling. And how do you deal with that in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point. It's like so many of these, acceptable is a great way to look at it. Like, as a culture, it's okay to feel some things and less okay to feel other things. But like,
Let alone talk about them and write songs about them. So
yeah.
yes.
And so like, I feel like I don't have any control over this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's like incredibly frustrating, you know. And so I realized, like, a lot of the songs that talk about love, and I don't usually really write. I'm not like an emo writer. I don't really like write about that kind of stuff. I didn't think, but then like the proof is in the pudding. I started to look at what these songs were all about, and it was like,
Yeah.
you know, navigating these states of being, love and other emotions, and how strange they all are, you know.
Mm-hmm. How, for the songs that you've recently have written for this album, because some songs are over 20 years old, correct?
Yeah.
How was the writing different than what you do with the String Dusters?
From a functional standpoint, not Not really much different. Writing songs and making up songs sometimes is very much like sort of like trying to capture lightning in a bottle. Like there's like a moment of inspiration and then trying to follow it while it unfolds to its conclusion. And then only then, once the song is sort of complete, do I really know if it's going to be useful in any context in which I make music. You know, so there are songs I've written that I don't know that they'll ever find a home.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, stylistically or whatever. But I try to stay out of the way while they're happening. Because if I get caught up in like, well, I want this to be a String Dusters song, or I want this to be for this project, or this is to this, or this is to that. Well, then it just puts the brakes on the whole thing. And I'm just trying to let it out, you know?
Yeah.
So from a functional standpoint, the songs that I wrote by myself that came out on this record are the result of just the ongoing process of trying to be open to the universe and capture any decent idea that's coming out and then help pile it up and make it into something.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like, well, this will work great for this. And that's part of the process of going back in the catalog and being like, oh yeah, that song would actually work really well for this. But then also like the ensemble existed sort of before the record and this group of musicians and the style of music that we started playing together. And then that also sort of inspired some of these songs, you know, because I would take the electric guitar on tour instead of the acoustic guitar. And I would be playing in headphones and playing like rock riffs and power chords, being like, oh yeah, this is, and then something comes out. And again, same thing. As soon as it comes out, it's like, follow it.
Yeah.
And stay out of the way.
Who are the musicians you brought on for the album?
Jeff Sipe is the drummer, and he's been around forever and has played with everybody. World-class musician. Mike Ashworth, who plays in the Steep Canyon Rangers, he plays drums and dobro and guitar and a little bit of bass in the Steeps. He's the electric bass player on the record. He's amazing. Tommy Marr plays lap steel. Daniel Seraph plays electric guitar, and Derek Gardner plays the keys. And those are all guys who live in the area. Lindsay Liu, who lives in Nashville, she sings some harmonies on there.
That's amazing. What an amazing community. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's something Brevard has. We punch way above our weight in terms of great musicians here. I mean, we have world-class, there's so many world-class musicians that live in this tiny town. And that's partly what enables me to put a different band on stage every week at my local gig and have it be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm never having to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Everybody
They're
I play
all
with
stars.
is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably 25 killer musicians here in town. And we're really lucky, really lucky in this little community.
You've released 2 songs off the album.
Yeah.
Reminds Me of You, which is a beautiful, I think just a beautiful fall love song. Even the tempo of it's very, you know, perfect. And then Afraid of Love. I want to talk about Afraid of Love and maybe your emotions around that and why New Love was so scary.
You know, I'd been in a relationship and been married for like a decade. And then, you know, getting out of that and gaining some perspective and knowing that I had work to do to not repeat the same patterns, to not find myself in a similar situation. And then, you know, I was kind of like right in the middle of that process of like emptying out and sort of like preparing myself for whatever was next. And I wasn't done with that process when I got involved with someone else. And that's sort of what that song is about, is that struggle of being like, I'm not really equipped yet to do this again. This is like a little soon. I could really, it's like I could really use another 12 months of being like depressed and really really like I need to be down in the. I don't want you to have to put an explicit lyric caveat on this, so I'm gonna try to keep it, but like down in the junk, like going through the stuff, because I was in it and I was depressed, and but I was like, you know, I had enough awareness, like Ram Dass says, it's like I was like, oh, depression, how interesting. Not like, oh, I'm depressed. Oh my God, right. I'm like, oh, I'm so identified with my depression. It was more like, yeah, this is me being depressed, and it's kind of fun in a sense because I understand it's like part of this process. I was like really down and really like in it, and then like all of a sudden like things shift and I'm falling in love again, and the world is so bright, but I'm like, well, am I going to get hooked on, you know, like if this person is the answer to this problem, well then I'm going to be hooked on this person. Am I going to be further dependent on them? What happens if this ends? Is this partly just a response to not wanting to feel bad anymore? You know, it's so complicated. Again, like I felt like I just had a little more work to do. But at the end of the day, I kind of had to ask myself, it was like, well, am I willing to pass up this opportunity with this person? And the answer is no. Yeah. Because this is the kind of person that if I could have written the script, this is who I would want to be with. Other than me not feeling ready for it, the conditions and the terms were ideal. Yeah. You know, but there was definitely that sort of underlying fear of just like, well, I'm just not quite, I mean, it seems so cliche, I'm not ready for this. But like I literally was like, I got other things I need to work on. I need another like 6 to 12 months of this phase. Yeah. And part of me didn't want to cut that phase short. But you know, that fear of like, well, will I be enough in this relationship? And can I maintain enough of myself? You know, because anytime you're in a relationship, there's some surrendering of your own identity. You're trying to harmonize. Like, it's just, that's really kind of what that's about.
And that you don't even see men talking about it the way you do, like emotions, the way you do. So that's great. Like, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Robert Ellis has an amazing record. There's a song called it's like Elephant. There's an elephant in the room. The way he talks about a relationship coming to an end, the emotional honesty was something I'd never heard another male express it that well, and it was really inspiring. Another one's he's talking about just driving around the block. I guess I'll organize he's like, he doesn't want to go upstairs to reconcile with this. So he's just waiting for her to go to sleep. It's like, I guess I'll fold the laundry, empty out the junk drawer. Dang. I guess I'll just go driving. Yeah. Amazing. And that hearing that was like, that was inspiring. Yeah. You know? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Robert Ellis, it's awesome.
Your album comes out Friday?
Comes out Friday.
You're having a album release?
I am, but not until next month.
Oh, next month. Okay.
That's the soonest we could get the whole band together, and also the soonest that I could handle it. Oh yeah. With my schedule. It would have been fun to have done it on Friday, but it's just not. It wasn't in the cards. Yeah. So the record, it'll be great. The record will be out for a month, and people can know it before we go play it. But I'm looking forward to that show. It's going to be great.
Do you have a favorite song on the record?
I mean, in terms of my favorite song, probably one of the first two singles, Reminds Me of You or Afraid of Love, are my favorite songs, I think, on the record. But in terms of like the production and the performance, the track, they call it the focus track. It's sort of like the third single that the label steers people toward on release day, is a song called Without You. And that's like, the production on it is incredible. It almost sounds like a Pink Floyd song. So in terms of like the record and the way it sounds, Without You is probably my favorite song on there. But that's a hard one. All the tunes on there are really, they all mean a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about your podcast.
Okay.
You said earlier just about having all these wonderful, great all-stars. Yeah. But I want to also bring a little light to the variety of people that come on your show. And I was curious if that's intentional or you're just like, that's a really great musician and I'm going to have them. It seems like intentional. Who's coming?
It's very intentional. Early on, especially during the pandemic, it was just kind of like, who do I know
Mm-hmm.
that wants to make some music,
Mm-hmm.
wants to do something, because no one was doing anything. But I certainly am sort of seeing now that the podcast is, over time, it will essentially be sort of like an extension of, it'll be a body of work in and of itself, and an extension of I mean, it's something that I'm making and putting into the world.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be part of all, once I'm done making things, it'll be part of all the things that I've done and the connections that I've made through that. The people I've gotten to play music with has been really amazing. And I'm there. There's no shortage of like middle-aged white dudes who play bluegrass that I can have on my show. I'm going to have one on there today. And part of that is because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Part of that is because that's what I am.
Yeah.
And those are the circles I run in.
Yeah.
I'm sort of always looking for more opportunities to have female artists on there, people that are not white, or non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
There are, and it's for all the reasons. It's more interesting, for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are voices that deserve amplification.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of why I do it is to open my own mind, expand my own world. And while it's nice to hit home runs and do the stuff that's easy, like, tonight we'll record an episode with Andy Thorne and John Stickley, who I've known for 20 years, and they're like my best friends. That's gonna be amazing, but also getting really far outside my comfort zone and having to learn music that's really different for me, and find common ground with people that come from different backgrounds and play different kinds of music. That is, it's good for me, and it's good for the world to try to draw these different connections. But it can be hard trying to coordinate schedules. And with my podcast, it's really, one of the things that makes it unique is that there's a collaborative performance aspect. So getting someone to have a conversation is different than getting someone to come to Brevard to play music with me.
Yeah. It's
kind of a big ask.
Yeah.
And my friends say yes, because they know that it'll be fine. But when I'm trying to get I want like Bella White to come play, and I can't even get in touch with her because she doesn't know me from Adam, and I don't blame her. She's so cool. And then there's Molly Tuttle, who's like a good friend of mine. We played together, but she's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Right.
So it's really complicated trying to fit the pieces together for guests for my podcast. And I'm experimenting some with doing more of a traditional format like this that's just conversational, so that I can have, for example, someone who's like a bass player. Yeah. Because if it's like, what are Sam Grisman and I going to do? We can't both play bass at the same time, right? I mean, so, but that's the long answer to your question, which is that yes, it is intentional, and I'm trying to I've learned a lot about my own musical limitations because my musical world is relatively small,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And like I was on tour like of the Grammy voting. We just got done voting for the Grammys, and you have to choose these categories that you can vote in, and you know, there's really only like one category. It's like the country and Americana and bluegrass category is really. I think I've got a pretty broad musical world, but then I come to realize that I'm only really even qualified to vote in this tiny sliver
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
what all the things that the Grammys covers,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of funny to me to be like,
Mhm.
oh, I guess, you know, I really do just kind of play in this one world. But yeah, it's intentional, trying to see how far I can expand my musical world.
That's great. I wanted to recognize that and say, good job.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Well, I know I need to do better. And that's partly one of the great things about working with the bluegrass situation is that they are leaders in
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
in amplifying a variety of voices
Mhm.
and making sure that all Americana is represented.
Mhm.
And they're great partners
Mhm.
for that.
Mhm. Is there anyone you want to play with that you have yet to play with?
Oh
Is
yeah.
there like who?
There's probably like 500 people.
Really? Because you've
You
played
should
with
see my
so many
list.
people.
Oh my God, you should see my list of artists. I mean, there's all these like pie in the sky musicians like Madison Cunningham would be amazing. Even people like Bruce Coburn. Um, you know, but then even inside, you know, more sort of inside of our musical wheelhouse. I mean, I'd love to. I've sung with Sierra Farrell, but I'd love to play with her a little more. I know her band really well. We hang out all the time. I'd love to play with her. I've got like a working list of musicians that I would love to have on the podcast, which by extension means get to play with.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's huge and it's
Yeah,
growing
great.
all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah.
But I've also ticked a bunch off. You know, I was able to play with Tim O'Brien, which was great,
Yeah.
and the Jim Lauderdale episode was really awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
I'm hoping to have Daryl Scott sometime
cool.
in the future. But yeah, the list is massive.
Mhm.
But my intention is to keep doing this,
Mhm.
and by the time I'm done, to have played with everyone that I possibly could have. You know, I can do about 10. I can probably do about 10 episodes a year is about my maximum. So, you know, if I can do this for 20 years, the math is pretty simple. It's like about another 200 episodes that I can maybe do.
I love that. I love you're like maxing all opportunities, just life maxing opportunities. I know so many people who don't do that, and it's so frustrating as a human being to be like, there are no limits. The box you've put around you does not exist.
Yeah.
You could be doing anything with anyone.
Yeah, and we only live once that we know of.
True. Yeah.
So, you know, and every day is a gift.
Yeah.
And when I'm in a good headspace, I wake up and I feel like I'll have these days where I'm like, today is like ripe with possibility and potential. Anything could happen. And what can be done today? Yeah. You know? It's like the world is magical, and there's so much to do, and so many things to see.
Exactly. Yeah.
So many things to feel, and it's awesome. And I try to surround myself with people who have a similar attitude. Like,
right. Yeah.
What's the best way that we could approach today? Yeah. What's the coolest thing that we could do? And I'm learning sometimes that is like sitting right here outside and just zoning out and watching the goats walk around the field. Sometimes that is really the best thing to do. You know, I'm learning that it's not always like, we're going to go to the mountains and then we're going to come back and we're going to have a delicious meal. And then the next thing, and then if this is great, so let's make this better. And then we're going to, you know, it doesn't always have to be like that. But I definitely I try to pack it in. Yeah. I love life. It's fun.
Oh yeah. If you haven't heard the String Dusters or seen Travis on stage, you're like light, just a big ball of light and always smiling. I don't know how it's so sustainable, but I guess you're doing what you love, which helps quite a bit. But
it's fun out there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's fun out there.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I love playing music, and I love everything. Our banjo player and I, we have a saying. It's like this joke. But when you're firing on all cylinders, we say, name a thing. Name a thing. Meaning, I love everything. Name a thing, and I'll tell you how much I love it. And that's the game we'll play. And we'll name all this, and the joke is you name all these undesirable things, and the guy's just like genuinely like, I love that. I love everything about it, Name a thing. I mean, life is fascinating. I'm also like, I live like a really blessed life where I'm able to like have an interesting schedule and go beautiful places, and I get to play music and make a living doing it, and I've got healthy kids, and my day-to-day is pretty great. I have a lot of opportunities, and I take advantage of them. I try not to lose sight of the tremendous privilege that I have being a white male raised in a middle-class family, and I was able to get some amount of college education. I could have had as much as I needed. It's a, relatively speaking, it's a pretty easy path for a guy like me. I just smile and put out a good vibe, and doors tend to open, and it's not that way for everybody.
True.
Just by virtue of the world I was born into. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to take full advantage of it.
Yeah.
I say yes, and the universe says yes back, and we're out here just loving life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned a lot about myself when we entered the pandemic, and about 6 months into it, I sort of realized my response was so different than a lot of my peers. And instead of becoming withdrawn and going on unemployment and waiting for something to happen, I just went into like full, almost like service mode, where I realized by going on Instagram Live and feedback I was getting that there was this real need for people to be spoken to, or for someone to try to bring people together and meet people on their own terms, go into their homes and try to connect with them. And then I also realized that and I was lucky to have the Gray Eagle where we could live stream, and then this venue, King Street here in Brevard, where we can roll up the back door and everyone would wear masks, and you'd sit outside or you could sit inside.
That's great.
We started putting on shows in July of 2020. And like, it was more of a mentality of like, all right, well, here we are. Well, what can be done? Instead of like, well, what's going to be done for me? And I don't want to sound critical of other people's responses. Every response to the pandemic was totally reasonable. And I had this great conversation with Anders, and I still have the quote that we came up with pinned to my wall, something about like, your fears are founded, and it's okay for you to feel however you feel. However, some people, we all responded really differently, and I went to work. Yeah. And I feel really good about that. And I still have people come up to me and talk to me about how much those early happy hours meant to them, when we were all wondering what was going to happen. We were all disconnected. We were all inside on our computer screens, and everything that's sort of come, this record, the podcast, even the side projects, almost everything that's come since the pandemic that isn't Stringdusters related, none of that would have happened if it weren't for the pandemic. I mean, I lucked out and had the context in which to grow and continue to serve and fill a role. And try to do something.
Yeah.
I do things, and that's, I've always been that way, and I hope, and that's what I'm trying to hopefully pass on to my children, is a sense of agency.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you can wait for opportunities or you can make them.
Yeah.
And there's infinite potential out there, and there's always a need to be filled. And so figuring out what that need is that's where opportunity lies.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And even the obligation, you know, there's a fine line between, I don't know, I would never switch jobs with you, but the obligation of a musician to interact with the public, and the public wanting, or, you know, feeling the obligation that you should do that. And not that you're very accessible, but it is very, you know, it's very clear that you are fulfilling that obligation, especially during those times. I remember that when the happy hour was getting started.
Yeah, it's just, that part can be a struggle, you know. I never really feel like I'm giving enough of myself, at least on like a physical level. Like it's easy enough to like make music, put on shows, that kind of thing, but that next level connection, going to the audience after the show, or even just like you'll see it tonight, you know, after the show at King Street, like I'm on stage, I haven't even wrapped up my cables, and people are coming up and wanting to talk, and they're mostly wanting to just tell me how awesome I am. Exactly. So I mean, I should be all about it. You know? Right. On the other hand, there's part of me that's like, you know, I just went into this space. I just went into this place and did this thing for you for 90 minutes. And if I had it my way, and this is what happens with the String Dusters, I walk off stage and then I can sort of like hide, and reset and just chill. But what I think what the really special musicians and the really special creators, or the sort of next level humans, like the Willie Nelsons of the world, will go off stage and like right back out and make themselves available on a really personal level with the audience. And that's something, along with remembering people's names, that's like one of the things that I would really, I wish it was easier for me to be able to just go, sort of like an extension of the service of making the music and putting on the shows, than to be able to make myself even more available. But it's hard because, you know, some part of me has to be for me. It has to be preserved for me.
When you're on stage, and just like what you're doing with the String Dusters, and I imagine with Broke Mountain, I mean, you're up there for so long, you're in a mental state, and you're going through multiple mental states, probably. I can't even imagine what would be needed to come down to even have conversation. You know, people's in your face wanting to have certain conversations, and you haven't gotten out of there yet. Is that true?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's like a totally different role. And that's in everything I do in my life, whether it's father, musician, entertainer, parent, interviewer, it's all me. But on one level. But on another level, those are all roles that I'm playing, and they all demand a different approach and even a different vibrational frequency, you know, which can make it hard to parent while I'm also a string duster, or even to be a partner while I'm being a parent. Even that has its own challenges because the roles are slightly different. And so, you know, yes, and being on stage when I'm really embodying that role completely, it's pretty far away from the others. Yeah. And not in a way where it's like an act and I'm disingenuous. It's all me. Yeah. But it's these really kind of different versions of me that require different, it's a whole different thing. And the deeper it gets on stage, the further away it gets from these other roles.
Yeah.
So yes, sometimes it can be hard to flip that switch. But I wish it was easier to just go straight from the stage right out into the audience and to be able to be available. Because, those interactions with fans, it's a fascinating dynamic to me, because it's really not about, when I'm doing that the best, I'm essentially, it's not really about me. It's like I'm like a space for them, and like as a fan doesn't even really know me.
Right.
It's mostly like a projection on me of who they want me to be, which is
Mm-hmm.
totally cool, and I'm all about that. I'm way into it. But to sort of go out and even like have a one-on-one interaction with a fan, they're all so different, and everybody wants a different thing. Some people want to just tell me all about. Sometimes people want to tell me all about something that's completely unrelated to anything, and to be able to be there for that, and to be like, oh yeah, that's so interesting. Your uncle is like a farmer. That's so fascinating,
Yeah.
To where or they want to tell me how great I am, which is like not. Well, that's nice. It's not a very comfortable place to be.
Yeah.
Someone's sort of fawning over you. It's like, okay, I'm glad that, So it's like this, it's like this whole projective experience, and I'm there for it. And I sometimes leave in my mantra before I go on stage is like, I just want to be able to be here, whether people want to love me or hate me or whatever I need to be for everyone in that audience. Let me be that for them. Because that's kind of the ideal space for everyone to have their sort of needs met in their own projective system, right? Whatever they need me and my bandmates to be, we can be that for them. That's when it's really happening. But then when you get out there on like the individual level and you're having these face-to-face conversations, it can be wild out there, sort of seeing and navigating that, and it can be challenging.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to just walk off stage and go back to the green room and chill with your bandmates and be like, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, and go back to talking about what other mundane stuff we were talking about before the show.
Yeah.
Just to kind of clear the air. But ideally, we get out there and interact.
That's thoughtful. That's more than just a musician. You know what I mean? That's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me.
That was cool.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you so much for listening to the Moonlight Ramble. Give Love and Other Strange Emotions a listen. I hope you catch one of the many opportunities to see Travis live. You can tune in to his podcast, The Travis Book Happy Hour, to be introduced to phenomenal musicians. After my conversation with Travis, I was fortunate enough to meet up with a friend to attend the Travis Book Happy Hour, where I got to see Andy Thorne and John Stickley play and hear their amazing stories from high school and college to meeting Travis and Anders Beck in Colorado over 2 decades ago. For the latest updates on the podcast, follow us on Instagram or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Support your local musicians and venues, and happy listening. This last clip is from my night at the Travis Book Happy Hour.